Welcome, Sens Talk.
Russell winds in, feeds it back across the strike, and scores! Yakemchuk makes it 2-0. Hit along, scores!
Tim Stutzlock cross, Tkachuk score! The captain, Brady Tkachuk, buries it with 1:18 to go.
See you later. Go Sens, go! Welcome to Sens Talk. My name is Brandon Plant, and I am your host. In this video, I'm going to break down and recap the Ottawa Senators' second day of the draft. That's right, I'm going to take a look at rounds 2 through 7 from your Ottawa Senators in the 2024 National Hockey League Draft. If you're looking for my reaction to Ottawa's 7th overall selection, Carter Yakemchuk in the first round on Friday night, check out my last video. I did a nearly 20-minute long breakdown on the newest elite prospect in the Sens prospect pool. Very, very fired up to have Yak as part of the organization. My goodness, cannot recommend it enough. Check out that video. This guy's got hands. He's got flair. What an exciting pick that is. But that's enough about Carter Yakemchuk. There's an entire video for him. Make sure to check that out. And, you know, Yakemchuk and the rest of the draft, I'm just going to tie it all in here. Very tall. Very, very tall. The Ottawa Senators made it a point, not intentionally. I watched the post-draft interviews with the scouts and with Ryan Bonus and Steve Stais and everyone. It was not exactly an intended goal to draft big, but they drafted big. My goodness, did they ever. The average height for the Sens prospects drafted in this year's draft, 6'4". 6'4". That is not normal. That is not normal. That's not average. That is huge. Clearly, the Ottawa Senators are trying to go for a much more rugged style of play in the future. They want some big bodies coming down the pipeline, and my goodness, they got some coming in for sure. It is a notable thing, though, that around the National Hockey League, the average height was actually 6'2" for the prospects that were drafted. So clearly there is a trend around the National Hockey League to draft guys with more NHL-ready frames and ready size. There was the last 10 years, I'd say, there's been a good amount of period of time where shorter players have made a role into the National Hockey League and become a mainstay, and sometimes have even become coveted, especially for wingers that have good shots. But I don't know, as we always see at the National Hockey League, whenever a team wins the Stanley Cup, you always see the other 31 teams trying to emulate what they did. So, you know, with the Avalanche, when they won, it was all about speed and being, agile. When Florida won, it's all about being tough and big. So it is notable that not only the Ottawa Senators, but the entire National Hockey League took note of that and got bigger this draft. So with that, speaking of getting bigger, my goodness, you cannot get bigger than Ottawa's 39th overall pick. Gabriel Eliasson from Sweden, the left-handed defender, is massive. My goodness, this guy is huge. He's 6'7". My goodness, 6'7" is absurd. It's tied for the tallest in the draft for eligible prospects. He's also only 17 years old. He turns 18 in a few months, which means he can still grow to 6'8", maybe even 6'9". This guy, if he gets an opportunity in the National Hockey League, might even become the tallest player in NHL history. It is unbelievable how big this guy is at such a young age. And for his size, he's a good skater and let's just say very physical. He's very physical, good puck mover as well. Actually has some decent offensive upside considering he only had 6 points last year, in the junior leagues in Sweden. But, he's not known for the points. You're not drafting him for the points. You're drafting him for the size. And he's got the size and he uses that size. Let's just say that. Elite Prospects, their draft guide said, he has an endless lust for violence. That is a direct quote. I'm not just paraphrasing. I'm not making that up. Direct quote. He has an endless lust for violence. Unbelievable. You can see her on your screen right now. That is probably an understatement. Absolute understatement. This guy is a menace out there. And similar to Yakemchuk in that regard, where he plays a very fiery type of game, very aggressive. He's literally noted as an agitator in his draft guide. So that's his role. He's going to be the agitator, aggressive guy in your back end who is going to throw around the body, and he might hurt a couple of people. And when I say that, I really mean it. He does need to curtail back the aggression. There's times where he's taking stupid penalties. It's very noted that he takes a lot of dumb penalties. He's been benched before as well because of this. He needs to mature a lot on the ice. Now, off the ice, seems like a nice guy. Everything I've seen, everything I've read, seems like a stand-up guy, no problem. But on the ice, definitely needs to mature. And he's 17 years old. Remember, this guy can't even get a beer in Ottawa, let alone go across the river and get a beer in Hull. So Let this guy develop. He's got years until he has any opportunity to get to the National Hockey League anyways. And with that size, that frame, he definitely has a good chance to get to the National Hockey League. He is committed to the University of Michigan in 2025, 2026. So yeah, he will take a few years to develop, but that's probably for the best because he's still very raw. He has the tools, but he's still a very raw prospect. But the fact that he's going to the University of Michigan shows all you need to know about how good of a prospect this is. Michigan is frankly one of the best programs in NCAA, and it really tells you all you need to know about a guy like this getting an opportunity to be at one of the top premier programs, and then more so getting to develop there. I mean, he's got all the tools. Can he put it together? Well, he has a very good chance to because he's going to one of the best programs in America. So welcome to Ottawa, Gabriel. My goodness, if everything works out to plan and he develops as he potentially can, he's got the ingredients to become a true staple on Ottawa's blue line for years to come. My goodness, watch out for Gabriel Eliasson. Now, we move on now to the fourth round, where I mentioned this literally before the fourth round kicked off for Ottawa. Other than like Roby Arventi, friend of the show, Angus Crookshank, Yakemchuk, I mean, Ottawa doesn't really have a true top six prospect. I mean, Crookshank, bottom six guy most likely than not, middle six, second line at the best. Third line, I think, is where he ends up when it's all said and done in his career. Very effective third liner. That's not a slant at all. Same with Arventi. I see him as a middle six guy at best. We don't have a true top six, prospect. We don't really have that guy in the system on the wing that in the next few years can step in. Remember, Giroux's not getting any younger, and we already have a hole at the left wing second position. So we got to draft wingers, and clearly Steve Staios read my message, or let's just say we're on the same wavelength, because in the fourth round, he only drafted forwards and left wingers at that, and some really nice ones, really nice ones. So Ottawa drafted Lucas Ellinas to kick things off in the fourth round out of Kitchener of the OHL. The winger in 67 games last year put up 33 points, 16 goals, while adding 8 points, 5 goals in 10 playoff games. This guy is a very, very good player because he can be put in all situations. He's known, frankly, as a Swiss Army knife. His nickname is the Wolf because, and you know what? I'll just get into the Sam Cosentino quote now because it kind of makes more sense why he's called the Wolf. Here's his direct quote from the broadcast yesterday. You ever see that movie Pulp Fiction? They call him the Wolf because in Kitchener, whenever something is wrong or a line needs fixing, they call him the Wolf. Lucas Ellinas. He settled things down. He's a reliable and dependable guy. He has the ability to play with skilled guys or down your lineup. Can play on your penalty kill as well. He's got good versatility. And that's exactly what Ottawa needs right now in their prospect system. You got Crookshank, you got Yakemchuk, you got your Venti, you got a couple other guys I'm not mentioning, but you don't really got much. So Ellinas is the type of guy here that definitely projects to potentially be a bottom six piece for the Ottawa Senators in the future, purely because of his style of play, which is very defensive orientated. And he's got the skill to back up the ability to play with skilled guys as well. In the second half this year with Kitchener in the OHL, he was all over the lineup, and not for a bad reason, for a good reason. Many people have noted that he was probably the most important player for Kitchener in the second half of last year and in the playoffs because he was able to help out in every line wherever they were struggling. So this is a valuable piece because pieces like this remind me of like Connor Brown, for example, or Nick Paul, where you can put them throughout the lineup. They're going to play hard. They're going to play strong. They're going to play smart. So, they're not going to cheat in their own zone. And this is a guy that is very valuable because coaches can trust a player like this. Once again, strong in both zones and has enough skill, as I already said, to really project to be potentially a bottom six future winger for the Ottawa Senators, maybe even a middle six winger in the future for Ottawa. So we'll see what happens. But most importantly, Ellinas, who was the 104th overall selection by Ottawa, was a Sens fan growing up. So small world for sure. You love to absolutely see that. So congratulations to Lucas Ellinas. Welcome to Ottawa. It's always cool to see a Sens fan join the Sens organization. That is really, really cool. Moving on now with another winger in the fourth round who might actually be the steal of the draft. I've seen non-Sens fans, I've seen draft analysts, I've seen journalists, I've seen just fans in general say that Javon Moore, drafted with the 112th overall selection in this year's draft, may be the steal of the draft. Javon Moore is 6'5". He's not a defenseman. He's a winger, a left winger, 6'5". He's huge. He is huge. I mean, I'm just thinking about the future right now. I mean, my goodness, can you imagine Brady Tkachuk And then, we'll see what happens with Javon Moore. This guy is just coming out of high school. Not fair to put him on a second line in the National Hockey League right now. But just imagine if everything works out. You got Tkachuk, who's like a wrecking ball out there. And then you bring Javon Moore out there, who still can grow, right? He's still a young kid. 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", potentially. We'll see what happens when it's all said and done. Good luck. Good luck. This is why I love size. And, unlike a lot of players, it's one thing to have the size. It's another to use the size. And Javon Moore uses the size. And, he projects as a big, strong, somewhat undefined two-way forward, according to draft analysts. And when they say undefined, I take that more as the fact that he played in high school in Minnesota, okay? So, Minnesota high school hockey is actually pretty well known. It's pretty famous for being some very competitive hockey. I think a good comparison would be like Junior A in Canada at the highest levels in high school hockey in Minnesota. So that's what is somewhat undefined. Let's see how he does at the next levels, at the NCAA and in the USHL, which he's played in a little bit already. But there's a lot of upside with this pick. A lot of upside because he uses his frame. As I already said, you can have the size, but it's how you use it. And he uses it very well because he utilizes his pro-ready frame for, his advantage. He hunts pucks. He boxes, the opposing players out. And he drives to the net like a true power forward would, frankly. I think this is a very powerful player. There's limited highlights on the guy, but the clips I've seen, and there's some really interesting videos where you can literally just watch his shifts in the USHL. Make sure to check that out. Look up like Javon Moore USHL shifts, and you can kind of just see his skating abilities as well. He's a pretty smooth skater, as well, I would say, especially for his age and size. So, he's got a very good skating ability. He's a very powerful player. He's an incredible athlete, too. That was noted about him as well. Played baseball. He was shortstop, he said in his draft interview, up until COVID. So a very athletic guy. 53 points, 26 goals in 28 games last year. So this is a guy that will need some development, of course. You need to round into form. But I think this is a guy who's got good hands. Once again, when he drives in tight, from the limited clips I've seen, he's able to put the puck in the back of the net. And he's very powerful when he drives to the net as well. So that should translate over to the pro game. So I could see this guy at the best second line, potentially. But definitely middle six. I think this is a guy that's a good enough skater with that size and using that size to his advantage. I think this is a guy that truly can potentially be a middle six, even a second line winger for the Ottawa Senators in the future. He's going to the University of Minnesota in 2024-2025, which is also a very solid program, just like a couple of other guys I mentioned in this video already. And they routinely pump out top prospects. So that is very, very good for him. He's going to be at a very good program. And the NCAA style of play will very much so suit his style of play. Once again, powerful skater, powerful player with a big frame. So I'm really intrigued to see, if the hype continues around this kid going into the NCAA. He may play in the USHL before, though. That's what he said in his draft interview in the Sens media scrum. So we'll see what happens with that. But, speaking of the media scrum interviews, the scout said after the draft, this kid grew like half an inch between the combine and the draft. That, I can't verify that, but what I take that as is he's still growing. He's still growing. And if he's still growing, 6'4", 6'5" right now might turn into 6'5", 6'6". And as a left winger, that is absurd. That is absurd. And in the fourth round, an absolute steal. So welcome to Ottawa, Javon. Very, very excited to watch you play. Now, to round out the fourth round, Ottawa took yet another left winger, which you love to see. Once again, cannot emphasize this enough. Ottawa desperately needs left wing prospects. So I'm glad to see Ottawa did so in replenishing that, I should say, in the fourth round in this draft. And they really got some hidden gems, I would say. Ottawa, this scouting staff, the amateur scouts, does their best work often in the later rounds, which makes me very hopeful that at least 2 out of these 3 prospects we drafted in the fourth round are going to hit and are going to be effective NHLers within the next 3 to 5 years. And with the 117th overall pick, it's potentially another player that could be an impactful NHLer in the future. Blake Montgomery. Montgomery is a 6'4" American winger, 6'4", massive again, who put up 43 points, 22 goals, and 58 USHL games last year. Elite Prospects describes him as a play-driving power winger with speed to burn, shooting skill, vision, and defense defensive ability. So this is another guy who, of course, like Lucas Ellinas and, as I just mentioned, Javon Moore, who's a power winger, but more so who can play in both of his ends. He can play a 200-foot game, and he's not going to cheat in his own zone, which is exactly what you like to see, because once again, this is a guy that in the 4th round, will he be a top 6 guy? I don't know. He also went undrafted last year, so he's a bit of an overager. He's 19 years old as well, so we'll see how he does. There's certainly a good amount of potential here. He's also going to a great school in the NCAA at the University of Wisconsin, so definitely good potential here for Blake Montgomery to turn into something. Just like Javon Moore and just like, Lucas Ellinas, he's a strong two-way 200-foot winger, and clearly Ottawa's targeting big wingers who use their size well and who can play responsibly, and that's certainly what Blake Montgomery is as well. Very excited to see what he does in NCAA with Wisconsin. Just like Javon Moore, when you got that size, you can utilize it well, and I think that's going to really help his development, down there in NCAA, which is a much more physically demanding league when you're going against some older players compared to the USHL or junior hockey in Canada. Now, at the last pick, the Sens took, with the 136 overall pick, defenseman Eerik Wallenius in the 5th round, and their final pick, by the way, of the draft. The Finnish left-handed defenseman is yet again a massive guy at 6'4", and has played primarily in Finland's top junior league, putting up 8 points, 3 goals in those 14 games. He did progress, however, last year through the ranks all year, starting off in the U18 league in Finland and reaching as high as Liga, the top premier league in Finland. So the guy clearly has skill, he can hold his own, and once again, progressing through 3 different leagues in a tough country like Finland. Some really, really good hockey being played there, which is, of course, impressive to say the least. So we'll see what happens with Eerik Wallenius. I mean, once again, haven't really seen much on this guy. There's literally no highlights. I had to look for like hours almost to find a picture of him. So you probably saw 2 pictures, which are just like draft pictures of the guy. I mean, there's really not much on him out there, but he's noted as a physical guy who can also move the puck as well. So take that as you will. I mean, once again, he's a 5th round pick. It could hit. He just needs, of course, some development as well. He's a young prospect. He's only 18. I mean, all these guys are really, really young. So you got to see what they can do in the next few years here. Don't write any of these guys off. But what I will say overall is I think it was a fine draft for Ottawa and for Steve Staios, his first draft as the Sens GM. It was fine. I think Yakemchuk at 7 will turn out to be a great pick for Ottawa. I think Gabriel Eliasson at 39th is an interesting pick where if it works out, great. I do think, however, that's a guy that probably could be taken in the 3rd round instead of the 2nd, especially that high with some of those wingers that were available. So if he's your guy, take your guy for sure. And then in the 4th round, I'm really a big fan of Lucas Ellinas. I think this is a guy that for sure, he kind of reminds me of like an Angus Crookshank type of guy where he can play everywhere. He's a hard-working player. Can play on your penalty kill. He can play on your power play. He can play on your 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th line. I mean, this is a guy that can do it all. And those are so valuable, especially for Ottawa, who desperately needs that in their system right now. And then, of course, you got Javon Moore, who I'm really excited about because a lot of guys seem to be excited about this pick. He's a freak of an athlete as well. Dual athlete, right, up until COVID. So I'll be watching him, especially in Minnesota. This is a type of guy that can really come out of nowhere and be the steal of the draft. Remember, Ottawa in the late rounds always finds hidden gems. He might be that one. Blake Montgomery as well could be another one. This is a guy that, just like Ellinas and just like Javon Moore, power forward, big frame, big guy. And then, of course, rounding it out with Eerik Wallenius, another big guy who can move the puck well. And we'll see what happens with him. Once again, haven't seen much on that player, but the fact he went from the under-18 league to the top league in 1 year, pretty impressive to me and should bode well for his development. So, yeah, besides that, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. How do you feel the Ottawa Senators did in this year's draft? And besides that, I'll see you all tomorrow for either some big free agency news or at the very least to kind of recap the Ottawa Senator RFA situation at 5 o'clock today. This video is going out at 6, so you'll probably know by the time you're watching this, and I'll have an update for you guys tomorrow about it. But Ottawa has some RFAs who they have to either qualify today at the 5 o'clock deadline or they lose them to free agency. Gary Ock has reported that Parker Kelly somewhat surprisingly, will not be returning, won't be receiving a qualifying offer, which would have been under $900K, which is a little surprising. We'll break that down in tomorrow's video. And Erik Brannstrom, which not so surprising, not because he's not good or is not an NHL guy. He just doesn't really have a fit here anymore, and he wants about $2 million on his qualifying offer, so that's just too much as a 6th, 7th defenseman. So he's gone as well, which is really unfortunate because we traded probably one of the best players in franchise history for him, and we're letting him walk for nothing. So yeah, I'll break that all down tomorrow, but besides that, thank you all for watching. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and I will see you in 24 hours or less. Besides that, see you all soon. Go Sens, go.